Hello, welcome to another Tiny Desk sermon. Glad you can join me today, whether live or watching this later. I'd love to know that you're out there, and if you leave a comment, I can see that you join me, or if you have any questions, feel free to submit them. This Sunday is Lectionary 28C, and I'm going to focus on the Old Testament reading. So let me bring up the text from 2 Kings. Now, the gospel reading is very closely connected. It's the story of Jesus cleansing 10 lepers who then go off, and only one of them comes back to thank Jesus and or give thanks to God. But the 2 Kings story is about this particular person, Naaman. Now, the whole 1 Kings, 2 Kings narrative is the story of the prophets Elijah and Elisha and all the kings they had to deal with, many of whom were very unfaithful to their calling as being a representative of God's justice and mercy. So there's a lot of confrontation going on. So now we're in 2 Kings, we're in the Elisha story. So Elijah was first, Elijah comes after. And here's our story for today. Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Aram, was a great man and in high favor with his master, because by him the Lord had given victory to Aram. The man, though a mighty warrior, suffered from leprosy. Now the Arameans, on one of their raids, had taken a young girl captive from the land of Israel, and she served Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, "If only my lord were with the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy." When the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes and said, "Am I God to give death or life, that this man sends word to me to cure a man of his leprosy? Just look and see how he is trying to pick a quarrel with me." But when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, he sent a message to the king. "Why have you torn your clothes? Let him come to me, that he may learn that there is a prophet in Israel." So Naaman came with his horses and chariots and halted at the entrance of Elisha's house. Elisha sent a messenger to him, saying, "Go, wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored, and you shall be clean." But Naaman became angry and went away, saying, "I thought that for me he would surely come out and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, and would wave his hand over the spot and cure the leprosy. Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean?" He turned and went away in a rage. But his servants approached and said to him, "Father, if the prophet had commanded you to do something difficult, would you not have done it? How much more when all he said to you was, 'Wash and be clean'?" So he went down and immersed himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the word of the man of God. His flesh was restored like the flesh of a young boy, and he was clean. Then he returned to the man of God, he and all his company. He came and stood before him and said, "Now I know that there is no God in all the earth except in Israel." All right. We'll walk through this a little bit. There's a few important points to catch. There's also some verses missing that I think are worth looking at, although I didn't prepare myself for that, but I'll do that in a minute. So, Naaman is a commander of an army, not in a judgment. And so he's been, sort of useful to God. The man, though a mighty warrior, suffered from leprosy. So here we get this wonderful and intentional contrast between Naaman being important, being great, being in high favor. He's a commander of an army. He's a mighty warrior, but he has leprosy. So he suffers from a lot of pain. Who knows how it limits him or how it shames him or separates him from some people in his culture. I don't know, what that would be, but it's possible. So he's a great, powerful warrior, but he's suffering. And he's suffering enough that others are trying to find a way to help him heal. And perhaps he's, you can get when you're just in pain all the time and you're suffering and it just goes on and on. You just kind of get angry and short-tempered, and it's difficult to just deal with daily frustrations. Maybe he's just being a jerk to everybody because he's in such pain. So this young girl who had been taken captive from Israel is serving Naaman's wife. And she knows that back home there's this great prophet who could heal him if he would just contact him. So there's something missing here that doesn't help at all in the flow of the text. We get to verse 7, it says, when the king of Israel read the letter. I don't think they ever told us that there was a letter. So give me a second here. I forgot to get my Bible open and marked. And let's see what is missing, because there's some really good details in there. 2 Kings 5, and we are missing 4, 5, and 6. 4, 5, and 6 says, so Naaman went in and told his lord just what the girl from the land of Israel had said. And the king of Aram said, go then, and I will send along a letter to the king of Israel. So we missed that, so it doesn't really make sense in the version we're hearing, which I think is a mistake. But then this is really an important detail we missed. He went, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of garments. He brought the letter to the king of Israel, which read, when this letter reaches you, know that I have sent to you my servant Naaman, that you may cure him of his leprosy. So we missed all that in the lectionary, which I think is just dumb that they cut it all out. Because one of the important things here is the way they describe Naaman. He's traveling with all kinds of impressive wealth and with 10 changes of clothing. I guess so that when he got there, he could decide which outfit of his would be the most impressive to put on, to look important. So he gets there, and the king says, well, it's not up to me to heal this guy. So he goes to Elisha, hears about it, and Elisha says, send him to me. It's kind of what I do. And so then he goes to Elisha, and what happens? Here's this member, important commander, great warrior, has great favor with the king. The Lord has even used him for his purposes. And he gets to Elisha, and Elisha does not even come out to greet him. Naaman comes with his horses and his chariots, and he stops at Elisha's house, and Elisha sent a messenger out to him. He didn't even come out and greet him himself. So, if a really important person is coming to see you, you would go out yourself to greet them. So Elisha's up to something here. I'm convinced this is very intentional. sends out the messenger. And the messenger says, "Go, wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh will be restored, and you shall be clean." And Naaman became angry. So Naaman's angry apparently because he, one, thinks Elisha should have come out to greet him because he's a great important warrior. 2, because he's now being told to take off all of his clothing, all of his impressive outer important stuff, and get into the river. He's being told to get naked and get in the river and wash himself 7 times, and he'll be fine. But this is all, the whole experience seems to be a little too humbling for Naaman to go along with it. So he gets angry, and he's also like, you know what, we have perfectly good rivers back home. Can't I just wash in one of those? Why have to come all the way to a river in Israel? What's the big deal? And he goes away in a rage. But his servant. So now we have, earlier we had a servant girl who is integral for Naaman finding healing. And now we have one of his servants who comes and says, you know, if the prophet had told you to climb a mountain and prove how strong you are to be healed, you would have done it. But all he told you to do was get in the river. So why not just do it? So Naaman goes down to the Jordan, an Israelite river. He takes off all of his regalia. He is naked. He gets in the water, and he does what Naaman says, and he's restored like a young man, or like says, flesh like a young boy, and he was clean. And in that experience, he comes back and says, "Oh, now I know that the God of Israel is the only God there is." So it's quite a conversion experience for this foreigner. But what is the healing and what is the conversion going on here? If the story was only concerned about Naaman having his leprosy healed, then it just would have been boom, 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 get a little shot in the arm, you're good, go on home. Or within the story, that Elisha would just simply heal him from afar. But there's some kind of greater healing happening in this story. And so Elisha, being wise, places these necessary conditions on Naaman that force him to submit, to be humble, and to get outside of his kind of familiar self-identity as only a great warrior. So warrior is a very, very old archetype that is often very meaningful to men. There are women warriors too. But it's that archetype about the part of us that is strong and is focused on getting a task done, and we sacrifice what we have to sacrifice to get the job done. Very meaningful to a lot of people, very meaningful to a lot of men, very meaningful to Naaman. It's his whole identity. But nobody is ever just a great warrior. Nobody is ever just a strong man. Nobody is ever just the one who always wins and gets everything done. So I think the healing for Naaman is not only the healing of his skin, but the healing of his inner self that allows himself to be humble and to submit to somebody else's direction, and to find himself as a more whole person than he was before. That in fact it was okay to not always have to be the warrior, to not always have to be in charge, to not always have to be important. That's why I think the story emphasizes the 2 servants. The servant girl, who really, if I back up here for a second, young girl captive from the land of Israel serving Naaman's wife, she shouldn't even have a speaking role in this story. She's too unimportant. But, in the Bible, unimportant people become very important all the time. And without her direction, the healing wouldn't have happened. And again, I'm sure they're all just kind of sick of him complaining and being a jerk all the time because he's suffering. So then also the other servant necessary is Naaman's servant. So perhaps in this experience, Naaman comes to realize that, oh, I'm a great important warrior, but these people are important too. They're part of the story. They're part of, a lot more than I realized. So I think his whole perspective has changed. He's, as the story says, he's now become aware of the power of the God of Israel. He has become aware that being healed has renewed him, but he's also become aware that perhaps all the facade of strength, of only a warrior identity without other identities, and the other archetypes that are often talked about for men and also for women, but specifically in male spirituality, besides warrior, is king, lover, and magician. I won't go into all those right now. They fascinate me, and I've done a lot of study in this area. But nobody is ever just one archetype. And when you over-identify with any one archetype, you have a healthy imbalance and not a whole self. So I think Naaman has come closer to having a whole self. And that's the healing that comes. And it only came through humility. And Elisha was smart enough to know that this is what Naaman really needed. So it makes me think about how we, maybe there's one thing in our life we think needs to be healed or fixed, and we just focus on that. But we don't see the bigger issues and needs we have, the whole self that needs to be healed, and how we might be avoiding tending to those things the way Naaman avoided having to submit to Elisha. So maybe we get too focused on the, when you go to a doctor and you have the presenting symptom, but if you only focus on the presenting symptom, you don't maybe see the whole disease that's going on. So maybe we also have to think about not just like, I'm really, this is really my problem, this is really causing me to suffer, but not see the bigger picture of what we truly need in healing. So it's a fascinating story to me. It lifts up the importance of healing, even for of humility, even for great warriors, and that is an essential part of our spiritual maturity and formation in God. Well, not coincidentally, but not coincidentally, this Sunday we are returning to our pre-pandemic practice of offering healing prayer with anointing on the second Sunday of the month. So this Sunday we will do that during the communion distribution. So if that is something that is meaningful for you to participate in, you're invited to come anytime for healing prayer in the Chapel of the Saints. I think that's where we're doing it this Sunday. This Sunday, even better, in my book, is we have our guest preacher, Alex LaChapelle, who is our former vicar number 46 from 2012-2013, and he is coming back to us from Marquette, Michigan, and very much looking forward to hearing him preach and presiding, but also getting to take some time during hospitality to let him share what he's been doing since the 10 years that he was our vicar. So I hope you can join us Sunday. Hopefully you can join us in person, but also join us on live stream. And that's it. I'm not going to go over all the other stuff that's happening because it's all out there. So thank you for joining me. I hope this is a meaningful look at this wonderful text from 2 Kings, and I hope I get to see you in some way soon. Peace.